What's going on, everybody? Zera back with another video today. First of all, I just want to start by saying, my guys, my dudes, we are getting some legit follows, subs on YouTube. The numbers are growing slowly and steadily, so for all you guys that have just recently subbed or are thinking about subbing, thank you so much for your support. Every little bit helps, and it's not a sprint. This is a marathon. We're going to get there day by day, piece by piece. So for right now, for today, let's focus on the next video in our video series, Tips and Tricks for World of Warcraft Classic. Alright, so we're moving into a subject that I haven't actually gotten to yet. It's going to be one that I might revisit, much like the questing and leveling one. But this one's going to be solely centered around the economy. Just a dab of economy with this one, but most of this is going to be centered around inventory, and inventory is going to affect multiple phases of the game. Some of this will affect your early levels, some of this will affect your late game, and some of this will only affect your super late game, like only when you're raiding, basically. So without any further ado, let's dive right on in with tip number 1. Is bag space is absolutely precious in Classic. So your bag space is a big component to leveling, because unlike modern WoW, where you can just log on to your main and send your alt some bag space, or bags tend to drop a lot more frequently in the lower levels for your alts that you're leveling, so on and so forth. I mean, for heaven's sakes, if you have been a subscriber for a while long enough, you actually have a 20-slot backpack, which is not the case in Classic. In Classic, you're only going to have a 16-slot backpack. I know it's not a big difference, but trust me, in Classic, those 4 slots are a humongous deal. So just remember, when you're starting out early, do not underestimate the importance of any of your empty slots in your bags, in your inventory. So tip number 2, use add-ons to really help you out. Again, this is important through all stages of the game, but especially early on, helping you know what items are going to sell best at a vendor can really help you early on by saying, okay, I need to dump something out of my bag. What is going to impact me the least amount? Because you certainly don't want to throw away something that could have gotten you, 2 silver and 50 copper, and you ended up throwing something away that was only going to net you, and you ended up throwing that out of your bag. I mean, instead of holding on to something that was only going to net you 17 copper, you probably would have been better off, obviously, dumping what was going to cost, what was only going to get you 17 copper, and then selling with 2 silver and 50 copper. You'd be surprised how a lot of things like claws from mobs, I mean, some stuff you just wouldn't even think about, actually sell for quite a bit in Classic. So get an add-on that will detail how much an item is worth in your inventory. That way when you pick it up and you're like, crap, I need to dump something for a quest item or something else, or an additional bag perhaps, whatever it might be, piece of gear, you got to dump that one slot in your bag. You're like, what's going to affect me the least amount? That'll help you sort that out. Tip number 3, saving money early on is a big help when you're leveling. And so, but an important factor about saving money, especially early on in the game, it can come from, getting you early bags, getting you bags early on in the game. Like the 6-slot bags only cost you about 5 silver from vendors. In one of the first towns you come across, whether it's Karanos for the dwarves and gnomes, or Goldshire for humans, whatever it might be, saving that silver early on is going to help net you a bag much sooner than it normally would, especially if you haven't actually gotten one to drop from random mobs at this point. Big help there. Okay, so moving on to tip number 4. While professions do add to the fantasy for leveling, I think I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, if you're really trying to net as much bag space as possible, you might want to hold off on getting professions early on, or at the very least, hold off on getting professions that can end up hurting you. Now, if you're doing skinning, for example, a lot of people are going to level skinning while they're leveling because of the fact that they can net them some more copper, some more gold along the way. Well, that's all well and good, as long as you can make sure you're going to get back to Inventor and that's not going to end up hurting you in the long run. But again, if you balance your add-ons with your professions and so on and so forth, this is not going to be as big of an issue. You're still going to have a problem with bag space, I promise you, early on, especially if you don't have, you know, those bags dropping. But if you farm up a couple of, for, you know, an extra half hour, 45 minutes to just, you know, get maybe 100 or so skins and sell them off, you might be able to make those 5 silver a few times over to get some 6-slot bags pretty early on. Maybe even invest in 8-slot bags. So this might be something you can do early if you allow yourself to say, hey, let me hold off on questing for a little bit. Let me get that, you know, 6 or 8-slot bag to fill up my 4 bag slots, and then I can, you know, push forward confidently to quest while leveling things like skinning and so on and so forth. But if you're not willing to do that, you might want to hold off on getting skinning because, again, bag space is so precious, especially when you're leveling. It may come back to hurt you in the long run. Now, that being said, we're going to move on to tip number 5, okay? So tip number 5 is going to be a way to get around this problem. If you actually get yourself an alt, and it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Hell, it could be a level 1 for all it matters. If you just have a level 1, you have a 16-slot bag to start with. You have access to your mailbox, and it's really all you need. You don't even need to go to the bank. You don't need to go to a major city. You just need you just need a mailbox, and you need a 16-slot bag. With those two things, you can turn right back around, and with your actual main character, if you're doing things like skinning and so on and so forth, you can find yourself you're out of bag space or whatever it might be, or you're afraid you might run out of bag space, just send that stuff to an alt, let it sit in their mailbox for a couple of days, and then when you get a chance and you got some spare time, log on to that alt, pull the stuff out of the bank, sell what you need to right there on the spot, and then send that gold or send that silver or copper, whatever it is, back to your main. Yeah, you'll lose about, 30 or 60 copper on the front end, but it can go a long way towards helping you, see that incoming problem and alleviate a lot of issues on the back end with having to dump items out of your bags later. So the 30 copper that you end up spending early on to send items out might actually end up saving you money in the long run, because that 30 copper might have come from an item you ended up throwing out of your bag anyway if you didn't send stuff to the mail. So that's a big one too. So let's move on to tip number 6. And this is more or less a callback to number 3 about saving money. How do we save money? Well, that's a great question. When you're leveling early on in the game, it is really crucial that you do not learn every single ability that there is to learn. Classic is a big time RPG. It's more RPG based than WoW has probably ever been in its history, because it puts a lot of weight and decision making on the player's shoulders and not the developers, which is really what an RPG should do. That being the case, Blizzard gives you the choice at every 2 levels to basically decide, do I want this, do I want that, do I want this, do I want that, and not to mention every level you have your talents. So look ahead over if you make it to 1 to 10 and you log off and you've got some downtime, look and see what abilities come up between 11 and 20 and say, you know what, I don't really need anything after level 12 until level 18, so let me just forego wasting time but going to my class trainer and just focus on questing. That can actually save you a lot of money. And for example, hunters, you don't need rank 2 or rank 3 of wing clip. You really don't. Rank 1 wing clip will do you just fine, because wasting precious silver and eventual a gold or more on rank 3 wing clip is not worth the extra 5% movement impairing effect. It's just not worth it. That's pointless. Same thing with volley. Volley does you no good. I mean, we're not mages. We're not going to sit there and farm mobs via AoE. It's just not going to happen. So volley's worthless. Rank 1 period. It doesn't matter. It's completely worthless. Scorpion Sting is completely worthless. And I would even go so far as to say, depending on where you are at and what mobs you're facing, anything beyond a rank 1 Viper Sting may even be worthless, because a lot of mobs are not very smart when it comes to their AI. So just a well-timed scatter shot can interrupt a heal or any kind of CC they try to cast on you, or eventually you may be a BM hunter and you have intimidation, or you may have both. It is possible to have both in vanilla. So all this can play a factor in you avoiding things like getting CC'd, or having some sort of big damage incoming to you, whatever it might be, or even healing the NPC healing himself. So Viper Sting's not 100% necessary for you while you're leveling, but again, this is going to depend. Your mileage may vary. If you're facing a lot of mobs that have a lot of health, or a lot of mana, I know that in Stranglethorn Vale, for example, those witch doctors in those cabins, or those logging camps, do spend a great deal of time casting heals on themselves. So while you use your CC on one to prevent them, throw Viper Sting on another. But does that require you to have max level Viper Sting? I would say not. But again, your mileage may vary. It's entirely up to you. This is the beauty of the RPG aspect. You as the player have full control. These are just some tips that I have that help me, and I want to share these with you. So again, take this one for what it's worth. Alright, so we're going to move on to tip number 7. I believe this is tip number 7. So, food and water is a incredibly crucial aspect while you're leveling. It doesn't matter if you're a mage that can conjure food and water. The fact that you have conjured food and water is going to impact your inventory. So even that has its own downfall. And the fact that conjuring food and water costs you mana, and also turn right back around and have to turn back around and drink, causes you to have an impact. So to me, it might actually be more beneficial to you as a mage to balance the times when you might want to, burn, creating food and water for yourself. Is water completely necessary? I don't believe so. Is water entirely necessary? Absolutely. As long as you can kite very well as a mage, making sure you have maximum amount of health is not really that big of a deal. Because also, remember the fact you're going to have things like Ice Block later on, you're going to have Blizzard, you're going to have Frost Nova, you're going to have Cone of Cold, you're going to have a lot of ways to keep mobs away from you and slowed, essentially permanently. So, just remember to keep things like this in mind. Obviously, you need to have water as a mage, there's no doubt about that. And you can eat and drink at the same time. So, there's a lot of give and take there. But as a mage, it'll impact your inventory. As everybody else, it will not only impact your inventory, but also impact the fact that you have to go out and buy this stuff, unless you're lucky enough to come across a mage that's willing to share food and water with you. So keep these things in mind. Food and water, big deal for you. And hunters, there's another layer of that for you, because you have to feed your pet. And remember, you've got various ways to heal your pet. You've got mending your pet, you've got bandaging your pet, and then you have to feed your pet, and then you yourself can either bandage or you can also eat. So be sure to keep things like that in mind, because there's a good chance that if you have a pet that shares the same kind of food that you yourself are eating, you obviously don't want to throw all that food at your pet all at once, because you need to be sure to have enough for yourself as well. Because you certainly don't want to be that guy that ends up melee and range attack weaving between you, your pet, and what's nearest target to you and nearest target to your pet, and be down to like 10%, and you're like, oh crap, now I have to burn Fiend Death when it wasn't absolutely 100% necessary. So things like this play a part of that. So tip number 7, food is critical. Okay, food and water is absolutely critical. Tip number 8, trade items with a travel buddy or a fellow guildie, so that you can both manage your bag space more effectively while leveling. So this kind of goes back to mailing stuff to yourself. But if you're leveling with a friend, and that friend happens to have a little bit more luck with bag space, and you say, hey man, is there any way like I can trade you this item just real fast, and you hold on to it while we turn this quest in, and I get these quest items out of my bag, and then you can just, trade me the item I gave you, or you can just trade me flat copper or silver for whatever you got it for. No problem. I have no doubt that people are going to be willing to help each other out like this. This is kind of a tedious one, I'll admit, and people may just decide, hey, you know what, it's better off for me to just dump this out of my bag. But if you're one of those people who wants to literally milk every copper, every single piece of copper for what it's worth, to better benefit you later on, so that you don't have to wait on getting that level 40 mount or level 60 mount, every little bit of money you save between 1 to 60 goes a long way. So this is just another little idea and tip to help you milk every dime for what it's worth. Alright, so moving on to tip number 9. Have space for class-specific reagents. Okay? This one is huge. Absolutely huge. A lot of people don't realize just how much each class has to manage. Okay, so everybody immediately, when people think of like class-specific items you have to carry around, everybody's brain immediately goes to essentially the same 2 classes. Everybody's going to think of hunter and their ammo, and food for their pet. And then the second class everybody thinks about is going to be, a warlock with their soul shards for summonings, hellstones, soulstones, shadow burn, whatever it might be. Those are the big ones. Those are the 2 big classes. But what if I told you every single class has reagents that they have to carry around? Priests have to have candles for raids. Pallies have to have their their symbols. Druids have to have their seeds. Shamans have to have their anks or onks, however it's pronounced. Mages have to have portal runes. Rogues have to have poisons. Warriors don't necessarily have items that they have to carry around, like reagents, but they've got armor and shields and both a 2-hander and a 1-hander they have to carry around. I don't care if they're prot, fury, arms, it doesn't matter. In the open world, a warrior has to hold on to a whole different set of weapons and shields to switch in and out between fights depending on what they're facing, because that was if there are some situations where a warrior absolutely has to have a shield or else they're going to die. It doesn't matter. Now obviously in raids, not so much of an issue. The only one carrying a shield is going to be your tanks. But in open world, when you're questing, and even world PvP especially, and in BGs also, is a big part of this, carrying around a shield as a 2-hand warrior, must have. So make sure you have plenty of bag space for that. So that is a big tip. I know a lot of people kind of just skim right over that one. So make sure you keep that in mind for the late levels when you're doing raids and whatnot. If you're a druid and you run out of seeds, or you're a priest you run out of candles, or you're a paladin, especially if you're a paladin and you run out of symbols, oh buddy, you are about to get in trouble. So keep this in mind. And tip number 10. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is not vanilla. This is going to be classic, and there's a whole laundry list of things that are going to be different from the original game. The big thing that's going to basically mostly impact us when it comes to the overall economy of our servers is going to be the stream and streamer meta. With that aspect, you as the individual, you as the player, have to decide things like the streamer meta. How is it going to impact my economy? How is it going to impact this? How's it going to impact that? Well, big obvious thing is, trading gold. Some streamers get gold donated to them from their viewers, from their fans. Nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay. Hell, Blizzard's even come out multiple times to the chagrin of a whole lot of people. Blizzard's like, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, if you got 30,000 people that want to support you, regardless if it's through bits, donations, subs on Twitch, how is it any different than getting gold donated to you? It's not. They're supporting you regardless, so it doesn't make a difference. For some people, it's a lot easier to get 1 million gold in a video game than it is donating as much or as little as $5 for a sub. For some people, $5 in real life is like literally the difference between losing their house and not. So if you're one of those people that wants to hold a grudge to somebody, excuse me, didn't mean to hit the mic. If you're one of those people who wants to hold a grudge to a streamer because their fans want to donate a few gold, you might want to look yourself in the mirror and rethink your priorities, because if that gets under your skin, I'm sorry. Well, guys, with that, I got nothing else. That's 10 tips and tricks to help you with all things economy and inventory. You know what? There's more videos to come, and I finally got my first downvote, and this video may get downvotes for that last tip. I'm not sure, but you know what? I speak the truth, and I speak things that ring true for me. But like all things, your mileage is going to vary. Your opinions are going to vary, and if you have different opinions, different ideas, different thought process on how things are going to play out for you, because only you know what you need, and you only know what your group of friends and your guildies are going to need or going to want. So y'all make that decision amongst yourselves. Classic is by no means a one-player game. I promise you, if you've got that mentality, like, solo, modern WoW, I'll come in and, do that. No. No. Not going to happen in Classic, I promise. So, with that being said, guys, love you guys as always. Continue to stay kind to one another, stay salty, and I'll see you in the next video. Zera.